I would request Manesh Bakshi, who is the curator and project coordinator and who is in charge of Regional Science Center at Planetarium, to formally welcome the gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Good afternoon, viewers, and all our viewers to the channel. We extend a very warm welcome and good afternoon to you all. Uh, just a few things need a little explanation, we suppose, and that is why we propose that we'll have an initial uh, beginning of the program, a little bit of explanation, what it is, what are we trying to do. And before that, we welcome Dr. Aniket Sule and Dr. Rakesh Majumdar to our program. Good afternoon, and thank you so very much that you could make time. Dr. Aniket Sule, a special thanks to you that you made time to attend this program, and we hope we will continue from here on. Thank you so much. Well, here in this program nomenclature, we have used a word adda, which probably will require a little explanation because it's a very Bengali word. It's not a common word among other languages. Now, adda is an informal discussion forum, which is very loosely defined like that. The informality in it is a very important lifeblood of the whole discussion and the discourse. But at the same time, in Bengal, at the beginning of the Renaissance period and even in the latter periods in history, we are quite well aware that the Adda used to be a discourse among the intellectuals. In that case, I may not qualify being one in it, but even then, there are very famous examples of this so-called informal adda among the people, which resulted into great creativity and ultimately that could create a culture, different culture altogether. One of my favorite ideas is this. It's not my idea, actually. I got it from several readings through and it's also a realization that innovation quite often we may think that it's a very regular procedure, it's a very linear thing to come, but it's not really so. There are researchers after researchers that establish the fact that often the innovations come through informal discourse among the people. It's a network that organically develop among like-minded people thinking of something, and that can create new ideas and new inventions even. So we thought that let us have a forum uh, in which like-minded astronomers and astrophysicists can come and discuss what is being researched all over the country. And there's a reason for that. If you look at the science communication trends all over the world, uh, probably even up to the last decade, the basic idea was to communicate basic sciences. But now it is changing. All over the world, the trend of science communication now is to represent research. There is a reason for that, because as and when people are getting more aware of the values of their investments, make no mistake, all the researches that we do, we are being funded by the people mostly. And even when it is privately funded, it is also backed ultimately by the people, because those organizations are funded by the people. And if we cannot explain to the people what we are doing and why we are doing, there would be some point of time when probably the research will not be supported by the community, and that's a dangerous thing to happen. That is why we felt that communicating research would be extremely important, and we tried to create a platform in which this will happen. We are also trying some other fields. We are also creating some other folks in the same effort. However, this particular one, since we are a planetarium and a science center, we thought that we should have our allegiance to the ideas of astronomy and astrophysics. And that is one of the basic sciences that people try to follow. And hence this adda, hence this informal discourse. And it is not formal in this sense that we have a range of very varied viewers. Some are students, some are general people, some are professionals, and we wanted it to be such because the crux of the research should be understandable to all. I remember Feynman once used to say that if you cannot explain your research ideas in 5 minutes, then you are probably not understanding it well enough to work through it. So that is why this forum, and thank you once again, Dr. Majumdar and Dr. Sule, for being with us. Thanks to all our viewers. From now on, first we'll have the discourse and then probably tumultuous adda, so to say. Thank you very much. Yes. The stage is yours.
Thank you, sir. Now, actually, this AstroAdda is not a new initiative. It is a new initiative in the sense that Regional Science Center and Planetarium Calicut is hosting it for the first time from our own channel. But it has been in air for some time, and Dr. Ratnashree from Nehru Planetarium was actually the initiator of this program. So this program is a collaboration between Astronomical Society's Public Outreach and Educational Committee, and whose chair is Dr. Aniket Sule. And Dr. Aniket Sule is already present with us, and I will request Dr. Aniket Sule to share a few words about how actually this program was conceptualized initially, and how Dr. Ratnashree, who is no more with us today, who died in COVID very recently, and actually we lost a great pioneer in science communication and astronomy communication. So Dr. Sule, can you please speak a few words?
Yeah, thanks Jayant, and thanks Bakshi sir for a very nice introduction. I would just, Bakshi sir, as you said, the word adda is in Bengali, the word adda is also there in Marathi, and it has same meaning as you explained. So coming back to the start of AstroAdda, so about a year back, we were in ASI POEC, we were discussing how we can communicate the research happening in India to all the students across India. And then we thought of some ways different. Ratnashree, the then director of the Delhi Planetarium, she said that, okay, I have some ideas. Let me think about it, and I will tell you what I'm going. Next meeting I will tell you. And by next meeting she came back with a full program that she was the one who thought of this name AstroAdda, because as you said that this interaction between students and the professional astronomers has to be informal. It should not be like one person is giving a lecture and everybody else is listening. Like on a typical adda, like we are all sitting together, discussing with each other. We are at some point we are like to the extent of even interrupting each other and building on each other's ideas. So we Ratnashree wanted that feel of adda or informal gupshup, informal chit chat to happen, and that is how she conceived this idea of adda. Obviously, she was running it through Nehru Planetarium Delhi's YouTube channel and their resources. For first month or so, she tried, or actually first 2-3 months, she tried twice a week AstroAdda. And then she realized that that frequency will be probably too much for students because they also have other engagements. So then she reduced that frequency to once a month. Earlier she was doing once every week, and then she reduced to twice a month. So instead of 4 AstroAddas, she reduced to 2 AstroAddas. But then later on in April and May, when second wave was raging around the country, and then Ratnashree herself fell ill, and this AstroAdda stopped for two months, and I'm happy that Jayant has taken up this mantle now, and the RSC Planetary Kozhikode will keep this program running, and that will be a fitting memory to Ratnashree. Thank you, Jayant.
Okay, thank you. We have a very eminent speaker with us, and I will just introduce the speaker before we go for the talk. So, Dr. Rakesh Majumdar, after completing his MSc from IIT Madras in 2011, joined Center of Excellence in Space Science India, CESSI, IISER Kolkata in 2013, and obtained his PhD in 2019 under the supervision of Dr. Dibyendu Nandi. His topic of research was solar filaments, the study of their long-term variability and seismology. He joined Indian Institute of Astrophysics in 2020 as research associate in a PhD-funded project under BRICS scheme. Now he is a postdoctoral fellow in Aryabhatta Research Institute of Observational Science, Nainital, Aries. He has 27 publications to his credit with an H index of 17 and 5,000 plus citations. He has delivered several talks in international and national conferences. So the stage is yours, Dr. Majumdar. Please.
Yeah, thank you for a generous introduction, and I want to thank you this platform. My respect to and Jayan sir, Bakshi sir, also Dr. Aniket Sule, and I also want to thank my friend Dr. Anindita Mondal, who also initiated initial arrangement of this talk. So just let me make sure that my slides and everything is working fine. And one correction about my introduction I only want to make before I start my talk, that I was during my PhD, it was under a joint supervision of Professor Nandi from CCISR Kolkata, and also Dipankar Banerjee, Professor Banerjee, who was also as an adjunct faculty of CCISR Kolkata and also a faculty, full-fledged faculty of Indian Institute of Astrophysics at that time, and now director of EDIS. So with no much delay, let's start our journey to the sun. But before again I begin the journey to the sun, and with you, as already been said, that this is more of a adda, so any point you can stop me, you can ask any question. And also I'd be very thankful if Anindita or someone just help me if there is any audio issue or any slide video is not running, because there will be a lot of audio visual presentation like this. There will be movie, not the audio, but at least the video and the presentation, so that college student and other general public, they can also find interest and connect with the what physicists do. So as rightly pointed out, sometimes we do research, but yeah, how much interesting it is only when you present to the people and people appreciate, then only the real feel you get that how much interesting the thing is. So with no more delay, so let's start with this solar minimum and solar maximum. So solar maximum, so to say, it's just a very active sun. So sun is doing a lot of stuff, as you can see in this. So this is a images taken in extreme ultraviolet. What does that mean? Extreme ultraviolet is only the visual, like this wavelength, which has roughly from 400 to 700 nanometer, which we can see visually. So all this color you see in these images is pseudo color, because there is no meaning either if you go in wavelength below red or if you go above the wavelength violet, so either in infrared or ultraviolet, right? So this is ultraviolet and extreme ultraviolet, and taken these images from with a continuous observation on near continuous observation from a satellite which is called Solar Dynamics Observatory, SDO, and this is a imaging which is called AIA. So don't focus too much on this jargon. So those are the only names of the satellite is SDO, and the payload is basically the camera, you can understand, but it is a much more advanced version of camera, but it's on the same principle even if your phone camera and all that does work. So sun has some this kind of cycle where sometimes it is too quiet, so to say, also not that quiet. We can see also some of those activities, but comparatively quiet. And sometimes it's a maximum, means it is doing a lot of activity. I'll come to all this in details. Just I'm giving an overview. So as an overview of this talk, what I'll first I'll speak some of the interesting activities, so to say, the solar activity, solar cycle I just told, and why does it happen? Why does this solar cycle even happens? So because there is, you can see correlation with magnetic field, but it is solar activities period is 11 years, that is 22 years. So all this I'll be explaining. I'm just giving the overview, and with that also this magnetic field north and south, that also get flipped. So that is like the one like interesting thing and why it happens, and the dynamo we understood the basic thing to explain this, but again we'll try to understand in more depth what scientist and solar physicist has solved till now, and what is the challenges which is still remains, and that is one of the hot topic still of research. And this is only one, there are other like coronal heating problem, so that also comes. So from any energy source, if you go far away, any energy source, any light is there, if you any energy source is there, be it fire or something, you go away, the intensity of light, be it intensity or be it the energy, whatever you form you say, but it decreases. But that happens from if you go from solar surface up to some point which we call a temperature minimum. After that, temperature increases, and it suddenly increases in some layer called transition layer, and it gets really high, like million degree Kelvin. So why is this is called the like the this is the problem of the solar physics, so to say, and the dark energy problem or dark matter problem of the solar physics, coronal heating problem. So till now there are a lot of understanding, but lot to understand. And those after telling all those interesting characteristics and problem of the sun, I'll come to a few of the new satellite which has been launched, and few of that has solved a few of the thing and also created few of the mystery again. So one of this example is you can see from the Parker Solar Probe. So this magnetic switchback, which is like was not in the plan when they they have probed this satellite to there, but they had also solved few problems, but created few problems understanding how this switchback. So now in the solar community, a lot of debate whether they are due to reconnection or they're to turbulence. So a lot of, so we'll come to that also. And then also we'll try to understand the solar probe, and another satellite also I'll talk about is a solar orbiter, which will see and which will try to see the pole of the sun. And I'll also explain how this orbit is there and how that can be achieved. So there will be like years and years to get achieve the tilt of the orbit, why it takes so, why we can directly send our satellite. So that much that also will I'll try to explain a bit also. And also I'll, in that point of view, I'll talk about our Aditya L1, the promising our Indian mission. So that will be hopefully in the early next year it will be launched. And now, before going to all this interesting problem about the sun and also some of the engineering and technological advance which made this kind of satellite launching and this kind of observation possible, before going to that, just few numbers and just to get an idea how big is the sun and like the what are these properties of the sun. So you can see the radius of the sun. It is almost 109 times of the Earth, and this is the circumference, surface area, and you can see the volume and mass. Average density, you can see it is roughly 1.4 times 1.4 gram per centimeter cube, so 0.2555 times of that of our Earth. And density, if you take its center, is like 12.4, and yet its equatorial surface gravity is 274. So all of you know 9.8 roughly for our meter per second square for case of Earth. So it is almost 28 times that of Earth, and its escape velocity is 617. So it is 55 times of Earth. So you can imagine how gigantic all these numbers tells. And the center temperature, you can see 1.57 into 10 to the 7 Kelvin. And now if you, that is the center. I'll come also all this about the center and what we call is the photosphere, what is the corona. And this is not the corona we now worried about, this is the solar corona. I'll come to that also. And the photosphere, if you come from the center, go outwards, slowly temperature decreases, and in the photosphere the temperature is 5700 roughly Kelvin. But after that, till some point temperature decreases, but in the lower chromosphere the temperature start increasing, and in the transition layer it start increasing, and you can understand from this almost 5700 it reaches to this million degree Kelvin. So how this inversion happens, why the temperature increases. And again, this roughly talking about this age of our sun, though as a star it's not that exciting. Maybe for the stellar physicists it's not going to be a fate of a neutron star or black hole. It will be through a red giant, it will be even not a neutron star, it will be end up with some white dwarf. So now rotation period, we can see it's 27 days, but very interestingly its rotation period is not same in the equator and in the pole. So if you look at the both at the equator and pole, so your equator rotates faster. So if your equator roughly of that of sun rotates 25 days and pole greater than 30 days. So this is called differential rotation, and this also plays an interesting role in this flipping of this north pole and south pole of the sun. So initially your magnetic field will be this north to south. Normal magnetic field, you know, there should be the bipole, no monopole existed, so it should close and some of the field line will be like that. But that will be initially, so when your cycle starts, solar cycle start. But then due to this, mainly this differential rotation, your magnetic field gets stretched. So we call then this north to south direction magnetic field as a poloidal field. Poloidal field, the poloidal component of the magnetic field, right? And this other perpendicular direction component we call is toroidal field. So now with this differential rotation, since this your equator rotates faster, your poloidal component of magnetic field now get converted in the toroidal field. And this is the main mechanism by this north south. First it what will become, this will get without any magnetic field, and then the rest of the magnetic field, which few sunspot diffusion, I'll come to that what they are. So then that again creates some opposite polarity, that again becomes north pole becomes south pole and south pole become north pole. And then another mechanism comes when this sunspot magnetic field has to be, because there is initially north magnetic field like north pole of the sun. So to become it south, somehow you have to migrate your existing magnetic field towards the pole. So that happens through this meridional flow, some flow which is still now, even with this good technology, good satellite, is not been directly measured, this meridional flow. But it has to be there to just to, if this dynamo and all these things is correct. So that is another challenge. But before we go to that, all this interesting topic, first go to the basics. So what is the core? Core is sum from the center of the sun till, if we take the r to be the distance from the center to the photosphere, which we call for the which is the visible surface. So if you see from the naked eyes the surface of the sun, what you see, that is called, we call photosphere. So that distance we will take radius of the sun r0. So if I take that r0, so roughly from 0 to 3 r0, that is the core. Okay, 0.3 r0. From 0 to 0.3 r0 is the core where this main fusion happens. So all of we know, 2 hydrogen atom fuses and make helium, and there is some loss of mass during this process, and from the famous Einstein formula, E equal to mc square. So this lose mass, whatever is lost during this fusion, so that is basically converted to energy. So that is the source of energy which is happening this fusion in the core. Then the next layer from 0.3 r0 till 0.7 r0, which is known as radiation zone. So after you make the energy, so then we know from the basic physics that there could be 3 processes of this transfer of energy, right? So one is radiation, one is convection, and one is conduction. So now energy is getting radiated, and through this radiation process, energy is going outward. That process happens till 0.7 r0. After that, this satisfied the criteria for convection. So this is the this lower level of the convection zone. So from 0.7 r0 till the photosphere 1 r0, we call convection zone. And the normal convection which you see when you boil the tea, and the convective cell you see, small convective cell, all the things, same physics principle, it happens in the sun also. So there's convective, due to this convective cell also, you see some of this granular kind of pattern. But you can understand this is a 3D. Also in your case of T, it's a 3D. So it will be a 3D kind of cell. It's not a two-dimensional, but if I draw it in 2-dimension, it will be this kind of cell. So this you see when you see with the high resolution telescope, then you see all those granular pattern in your photosphere. And then after the photosphere, next level comes, which is we call the like the atmosphere of the sun. Like our Earth, there are atmosphere of the sun, but unlike our Earth, which has a neutral molecules or atoms in our atmosphere, it has in an atmosphere also, it's all due to high temperature, all the matter is in the ionized state, which is called the fourth state of matter, plasma, right? So now the first layer after the photosphere in the atmosphere is called chromosphere. It's called chromosphere. So that happens, this photosphere is only kind of surface, kind of roughly this 100 kilometer kind of thick. So it's not a that kind of, it's only kind of layer, but chromosphere has a extent of this 10,000 to 20,000 kilometer, and that happens because after some point from photosphere, temperature decreases, and from this temperature minimum, temperature increases, but not so rapidly. But suddenly after this, where the chromosphere ends and this corona, next layer corona, solar corona, so that is the solar corona, the most outer layer of the solar atmosphere, which is known as corona, there suddenly the temperature increases, and that is known as transition layer. And transition, because of this transition of the temperature, and also there is sudden drop in density as well. So due to the both cases. Now there are a lot of feature in the this atmosphere. One is called this prominence, another could be this coronal loop. So what are they? All the feature will be governed by this magnetic field. Okay, that dictates what should be the structure, what should be the dynamics in the solar atmosphere. But having said that, all of this structure is not independent, like in this separate layer in the chromosphere or the photosphere or the corona. So for example, take a coronal loop. So that you see in the corona as a loop, but their route is rootly depicted through the chromosphere up to this photosphere of the sun, even still below the photosphere. So those footpoint of this coronal loop, one as a will be in a positive magnetic field, another is a negative magnetic field, and those in a like this visible image you see as sunspot. And before even this satellite era, Galileo, and even before Galileo, people has observed that and also made a count of that. And people just see how the number of sunspot varies with time. So they see this with the 11-year cycle that varies. So that was well observed even before this satellite era, because this corona and the chromosphere, all this temperature goes to extreme ultraviolet or at least ultraviolet. So you have to go above the atmosphere due to the ozone hole, which protects us from this kind of radiation. So you have to go above that to see that. So now coming to this structure of coronal loop, I have explained that other magnetic field structure like the prominence, which is cool plasma, but it is hanged in the corona, so to say, against the gravity, again due to a complex magnetic field structure, and not as simple as the coronal loop, where this magnetic field is simply there because of Flux-Rosen theorem, which is, so to say, like the plasma just follows the magnetic field line. It is reached in this magnetic field line. So otherwise the corona has less density, but there are like the very dense, so to say, this plasma is get stuck in this magnetic fields. You can naively try to understand like that. But this prominence is even more little complex. So now coming to this flaring region, so we see sudden increase of intensity this point. So this is known as flare, and why this happens and all, I'll come to that, but the basic mechanism is reconnection. So now I already told roughly, so this is the anatomy of the sun. This 0.3 naught is the core and all. I'll just skip it. And now you see another picture of the sun. So you see the same thing, core, radiative zone where this radiation is happening, and convection zone, this convective shell. And now the next layer is chromosphere, and the next layer is corona. I'm repeating the thing, but again, just to make you remember, because all this thing will be the thing which we will be talking about more and more over this talk. So this basic thing, core, then radiation zone, convection zone, but mostly I'll talk not much inside of about the inside of the sun. I'll talk more about this atmospheric activity of the sun in my talk. And now the density and temperature variation already I explained. This is the graph, so you can see from the surface. So this is the starting 0. So from the photosphere, if you increase your height in x and the y is temperature in one direction, and in another direction y, I plot this density. And so temperature is by this solid curve. So you can see this temperature falls down until this point, which is called as temperature minima, and after that you see this temperature increases in the chromosphere, but not that rapidly. In this point, in this transition region, which is few kilometer thick, there suddenly this temperature increases and reaches this million Kelvin temperature. And also you can see this density falls sharply, but in transition region, it's like a very much kind of sharp fall. So that's why it's called also transition region. And the next layer, which is very high temperature and low density, is known as corona. And now, as I explained you, if you have to see the chromosphere or corona, till the chromosphere, even you can see from H alpha wavelength, which is visible from your observatory or from the Earth. But to see the corona, you really have to go into the atmosphere, above the atmosphere, and you have to send satellite, because all this radiation blocks by the atmosphere. You have observation in this visible wavelength, and also during flare and those kind of activity, there are radio emission and all that also you can capture from this, because this radio window you have through the atmosphere, you can capture. But to see really see the corona, you have to go there. And also it's not only because of this, also to take a continuous observation. Because of this atmospheric activity, clouds, and also day-night issue, there are solution for that, like this NSO GONG. There is a NSO GONG network. Under that, there are a few ground-based observatory. One of them is itself in our India, Udaipur. So that takes continuous observation, because one time it will be one place over the Earth, it will be night, but another place it will be day. So it takes the observation and continuous observation in H alpha. So that makes a solution, but you cannot avoid at least the clouds and all. And also to see the corona, you have to go anywhere in the atmosphere. And again, coming how big is the size? So I already given you the number, but visually just to see that, you can see one sunspot, and here is the Earth and Jupiter. So this small thing is Earth, and this is the Jupiter. I zoom in here, and you can see how small is in comparison to one even small, like one big sunspot in the sun. And now coming to this SDO, I'll talk about this satellite and few other satellite also. To see this multi-wavelength observation, which is very necessary to see this coupling. So which is coupling? What I mean by coupling, that is means there are some disturbance in the photosphere, in the sunspot. So your coronal loop is rooted in this sunspot, right? So there are some, due to this granulation motion, there will be constant disturbance. So this part of this structure, coronal loop, so you will be see oscillation in the corona. So due to this oscillation, it helps also to get an estimation of the plasma parameter in the corona. Otherwise, to measure the plasma parameter, be it magnetic field or other plasma parameter, it is density or other thing, it is very hard to measure directly due to low intensity and all, because you can take the magnetic field measurement you see in the photosphere, but not in the corona, because to apply the Zeeman effect, the magnetic field is too weak to measure this Zeeman splitting. So now you see through this seismology technique, the same technique we apply when this earthquake happens. So if you can't go inside or you can't go any in situ measurement, so from this seismology technique, you can infer the information from there, so which is called seismology. So from this coronal seismology, you can do that. But for all these things, you need multi-wavelength observation, because you see some magnetic activity in this photosphere, and same time you see some coronal loop is oscillating. So you understand due to this photospheric activity, that is basically this is happening. And also this helps us to understand the coronal heating problem, because basically this energy is somehow getting propagated from the below layer to up. Till the convection zone, we understand this, through this convection process energy goes, but after that only radiation would not be sufficient to raise the temperature so high. So you have to be some other mechanism. So one promising mechanism is this flare and reconnection, and so which is called DC type of heating, and another is this wave mechanism. Some wave can propagate and take the energy up to the corona, so which is known as AC heating. Okay, and now you see different wavelengths. So this is Dopplergram, this is magnetogram, this is some continuum, which is a broad wavelength, and this is the other channel which resemble almost this chromosphere, and this is the corona. In the corona also different wavelength correspond to different temperature and different layers. So you can understand, though after photosphere this black body approximation does not hold well, but you can understand from your basic physics this Rayleigh-Jeans criteria, and this, that lambda T equal to constant. So if your temperature varies, so accordingly your lambda varies. So roughly you can understand that if your temperature is more higher, so lambda should be more lower, right? So like that, as a crude way you can take a understand. So that is in the different channel in the corona. This is all the images from a single imager, which is AIA, which is on board on SDO. Okay, so now coming to a collage of this SDO, so you can see different portion of the same image, how it varies in the different portion. So if you just look at the one wavelength, you can't see all this activity. You need to see all this. So for an example, you see in this movie how you can see, otherwise it looks from your visually only some sunspot is there, but when you really look at through this extreme ultraviolet or ultraviolet wavelength, you see there are a lot of activity in the sun, in the corona, in the chromosphere, and different layer of the corona. So this is just to indicate this dynamics of the corona in these different wavelength of SDO. I'll just fast forward this movie because I'm sure I'll go little running out of time. So I'll try to be little speed up here. So now you see all this activity. 1 minute. Yeah, can somebody just confirm that is everything is working fine?
Yeah, fine, everything is fine.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because sometimes that happens in online mode, if you don't hear, so sometimes it okay, fine. So again, I'm going into presentation mode. So now you see through, not only through this measure of the sunspot, you see this solar cycle. In the corona also, if you see this legacy of SOHO satellite, so from this 1996 it has been launched, you see how this corona also getting active, and then also after this 2010 already you have this SDO and also SOHO as alive. So you see all this maximum and minimum period. So you don't see only that there is a sunspot peak and no sunspot, this kind of change, but you see that also in, if you count, if you measure the total, be it radiation in ultraviolet, be it total activity, so or even the number of this, all this magnetic structure I told, like this filament number, if you count just filament number, you also get those kind of approximately 11 year of cycle. So that I just show from this. So this cycle 22, 23 and 24, and you see those kind of cyclic variation, but also you see this amplitude is not the same for all this sunspot number, right? So that has also interesting property. But just to show you with a correlation in the sunspot number, so you see there was activity was low during the minimum, where the sunspot number was less, but then again sunspot number also increases, and all this flare, CME, all the activity also will increase during this maximum time. So I just use the word CME. So what is CME? CME is coronal mass ejection. So some mass from the corona, even instead of its huge gravitational force, it successfully escaped from the sun, and it comes towards Earth or other planet, or in general in interplanetary medium. And that could be very much devastating for this. If you, let's say, launching some satellite and straight away some corona hits your satellite. So new branch of science came, and new branch of industry, I would say, came, which is concerned about this space weather. Because not only your research satellites are there, your communication satellites are there. So you have to save that. Either you just keep your activity of the satellite minimum during this high activity of this coronal mass ejection or space storm. And not only space, it also destroy even in your Earth high latitude if there are big CME coming and making it geo-effective. Geo-effective means some CME which is directed to Earth, which is called sometimes halo CME if it is directed to Earth. And then if it is making interacting with Earth magnetic field, we know Earth also has a magnetic field, and this plasma is ionized, and so it will interact also, and it has also magnetic field with this plasma. So it will interact with this Earth magnetic field, and then it will create a geomagnetic storm. So if it can create a geomagnetic storm, we call that to be geo-effective event. Okay, so now coming to this, I was talking about this amplitude of this sunspot number. So you can see there is a decreasing trend. So there are a lot of debate about this decreasing trend, and people are speculating about the ice age. Not only the people, even the scientists from the model. So all this prediction was happening because we know since there was a Maunder minima, and still it is a debate whether there was lack of proper measurement, because maybe there are some sunspot which is too small, or there are not at all any sunspot. Because there is one problem: if there is no sunspot, if you can kill the magnetic field, all the magnetic field in the sun, so there is no sunspot, but still some magnetic field should be there. Because the dynamo theory works, only it amplifies the magnetic field, only it amplifies the magnetic field. So the equation which is governing that we call the induction equation. So if the theory for this field is magnetohydrodynamics. So simple hydrodynamics, what you have for fluid, but now you have magnetic field. So with this, your Euler equation and all, now your Maxwell's equation come into play together, and now together is called magnetohydrodynamics. So the final equation with some assumption and making some simple as making it the equations more simpler, just ignoring the complex terms, you get this kind of del B del T change in magnetic field will be curl of V cross B, which is your source term. So due to this V cross B term, basically this del B del T means this your magnetic field increases, but there will be another term del square B, eta del square B, which will be diffusive term. So it is the interplay between these two terms, whether your diffusion will dominate or your production of the magnetic field will dominate. So basically what is happening here, due to this motion, this velocity field V, this kinetic energy, you can understand, getting converted to magnetic energy. So that is the source of magnetic energy of sun, because all this activity, reconnection, and then this burst, flare happening, that is the source. I'll come to the what is reconnection and all. But you need this magnetic energy, which is you converting into all this flare energy and all. But the source again to magnetic energy, the ultimate source of always is fusion. But even before that, this kinetic energy of the plasma, which is this to you are from the radiation, you are giving the energy to the for this convecting motion and the kinetic motion. But mind that there is a magnetic field necessary. If it is zero, it cannot amplify that. So you need a seed magnetic field. And even not in the sun, if you talk about the magnetic field in the universe and galaxy, so there will be it is assumed primordial magnetic field. So if somehow you can kill the magnetic field of the sun, so it is very hard to again revive your dynamo action. So that is also constant debate, and we're in danger of whether we're going to ice age or something. But now few scientists also told no, it will be only a weaker cycle, but not a no, like there will be zero sunspot, not like that Maunder minima kind of thing. So there, that is now understood that again our cycle is reviving, so we are not going into a ice age. Now coming to before coming to this satellite, I'll talk about this orbit of the satellite and all. So let's try to understand this Lagrangian points. So there are 5 Lagrangian points. So if you solve this two-body problem, Sun and Earth, and you try to see what is this minimum point, like potential minimum. So what does that mean in this minimum point? If you keep something, so that will be in a stable phase. So if you give some perturbation, it will come back to that point. So that is a good point to keep your satellite. So there are 5 points like that, but mind that Earth is moving, so all this point is also moving accordingly. So in some fixed point, so there are L1 point, which is just in between Sun to Earth, but more closer to Earth, you can see. And there are opposite L2 point, not very good for the solar observation because it will be blocked by the Earth. And there are also L4 and L5 here. And there are oppositely this L3 point, which is opposite to the Earth, exactly opposite to Sun-Earth line, right? And this mission of this Aditya L1 is aimed at this L1 point, right? And now I'll talk about this stereo satellite also, which is also not in some particular point, but which is also revolving around the Sun in the same orbit as Earth, but with different rotational speed. But now try to understand this solar cycle little bit, not from only the sunspot number, but also from the activity, other activity, and how it varies. So you can see the solar activity varies with this cycle, and one cycle we call from one minimum to another minimum. But as I told, this different magnitude is varies. And if you just see this movie, the sunspot number goes high during this time of maximum, and during this time of minimum, this sunspot number decreases, right? So that you can see from here. Now I'll little bit fast forward that movie maybe, but you can see here is I'm showing this maxima. So then it is going to minimum, less and less sunspot, and less activity in your corona, chromosphere, everywhere. Again, it goes to maximum. So now try to understand this from the this activity from this dynamo. So there is loop, as I told, coronal loop, which is emerging from this sunspot in the root and then goes up to the corona. Now this is coronal mass ejection. Something is coming out, throwing out from the Sun and going into interplanetary medium. And now you see this solar activity, this 11-year cycle, and this magnetic activity will be of double of that, right? If it 11, it's 22, because 1 north to south, there will be maximum and minimum. Then again is go to north to south, so it gets its original position to north. And now if you go interior of the Sun, you can see all this simulation animation. So is this poloidal field is getting converted to this toroidal field, and again from toroidal field to poloidal field through this meridional flow. So now if you plot, be it any magnetic activity or be it sunspot number, you will see this 11-year kind of, this periodic kind of cycle. So this was just an animation just to summarize what I have told, but now I'll come maybe little bit of about this solar flare and all. So as I told, the basic mechanism of this solar flare is the reconnection. So let's try to understand what is reconnection is. And but before that, maybe I'll just want to demonstrate one more movie just to say demonstrate how this kind of like solar cycle and we see and all, and also maybe this butterfly diagram. So what is butterfly diagram? Simply it looks like a butterfly, so scientist name is a butterfly diagram, but it's just a time latitude distribution. So in x-axis you have time, and in y-axis you have this latitude of all this sunspot you see in the solar disk. So this high point is -90 degree, and this is the equator, 0 degree, and this highest point is another pole. This is -90, and upper one is +90 degree. So now if you plot this, so here I just plot this sunspot number, and it is not my animation. So a lot of animation I have taken either from NASA SBS, and this is one from my colleague Sudeep, Dr. Sudeep Mandal. He has made this animation. So now if I play the animation, this movie, you will see how one can count this sunspot number. This is taken from this 100-year of observation of Kodaikanal Solar Observatory. So you see this sunspot, not the number, even the area has been calculated and plotted. And now if you see, their location also has been plotted, and how they generate this nice butterfly kind of structure. And since he has also plotted this area, so he also categorized it with different area criteria and given a particular color to a particular area, just to see whether there is a area dependence also in this butterfly kind of trend. So this is just to show how the solar physicist makes all these plots and diagram to infer some beautiful physics out of it. So I'll not run full movie due to lack of time, but I'll just try to explain this maybe reconnection thing. Yeah, maybe I'll just use this slide to explain that. Not the slide, but just for drawing and that purpose. So this is nothing but this maximum and minimum, again represented by this. So reconnection means some magnetic field that is getting reconfigured, and by that process of reconfigured of magnetic topology. Topology means in vague way you can understand some geometry of magnetic field is changing. So let's say here is a magnetic field in this direction, here is a magnetic field in this direction. Now plasma flow is pushing this magnetic field and this opposite directed magnetic field to come really closer enough, but that can't cross each other. That you know from my simple magnetostatics or college physics, right? So what will happen if it comes sufficiently close together? Suddenly this magnetic field orientation will change. So this will go this way, this will be get connected to this, and this magnetic field was coming this way, this will be connected to this. So this will be new configuration of magnetic field. But if you calculate the previous magnetic topology energy, total energy of this magnetic field and this magnetic field, you will see a lot of magnetic energy is less in this new field. So that is the source of energy that will be converted, all this radiation energy during this flare, intense flare, or this coronal mass ejection, which is the getting acceleration, this mass is getting outward acceleration, all this energy source is magnetic field. But again, if you try to understand why this even magnetic field energy is coming itself from, that is again from this dynamo action, and this is sustaining, giving continuously the magnetic field energy to the sun, and through this magnetic field, again this continuous activity, it is converting to all this energy, intense radiation, and also you not only in the visible or extreme ultraviolet or ultraviolet, you see this radiation and energy, you see also in this radio. So from this radio observation, you will see intense radio intensity here. Also type 2 and type 3 kind of radio burst you can see during this kind of flare and all. So now this is coming to again another animation, which is just shown not only SDO, there are other satellite like SOHO, LASCO, which looks at the sun, which after blocking the disk of the sun to see the sun. So here you see one flare is happening, which is seen from this SDO. Now you see from that some CME happens, that is captured from another satellite, which has blocked the SDO part of thing just to see this corona. Because if it does not block due to this intense intensity of this its disk, it will not be able to see the faint intensity of the corona. And see, it has done that, it will be able to see the corona. So now it's not only the multi-wavelength, but multi-field of view thing also coming with this different satellite, this SDO, stereo, SOHO. I am not came to the stereo, but at least this SOHO LASCO thing, and also there are Trace RECI, which is doing this X-ray observation, also taking what is the X-ray intensity, and there. Now, what is our SDO? I have not told you that. So SDO is, you can understand, with the Earth is rotating with some tilted geosynchronous orbit, and this SOHO orbit has a orbit. It is directly at L1 point, where we are aiming also Aditya L1. So by the way, it is not a point, a region. So it's safe, not that will be colliding with the SOHO or something. So this SDO is that point. Now coming to this SDO orbit. So it is, as I told, a tilted geosynchronous orbit. So this is our Earth, this is Sun. So it is a tilted geosynchronous orbit, and it is moving with this, our Earth. Now coming to a full-fledged picture of this, not only SDO. So here is SDO, which is moving in a tilted orbit, and LASCO, this is SDO, and SOHO will be here, and that is in L1 point, also moving with the Earth. But you look at this STEREO A and STEREO B. So which will be moving in the Earth orbit itself, but with this different orbital period, right? So it will be sometime going back and looking at the Sun from the back, and it will be somewhere here. So what it helps? So you are taking the image, because for in situ measurement, you have to give some satellite sent inside the corona. That anyway, people are approaching for this, be it Parker Solar Probe or Solar Orbiter. But for a continuous observation, and where earlier technology was not sufficient to sustain the satellite in this high temperature of corona, this STEREO was only thing to give you a three-dimensional view, because for an image you can't make a 3D reconstruction, and you can't really understand what is the physics happening in 3D, because all the velocity, everything you get in 2D projection. So this STEREO immensely helps us to understand this mechanism of, be it coronal mass ejection or anything from this 3D reconstruction thing. So now coming to a animation of STEREO, now you can see the all other like SDO and SOHO, you can understand that is with Earth, and now STEREO was two satellites, one is A and B, which is directed oppositely. Now we can see one is in red, one is blue, that is going. So in this movie, it is synchronized with the Earth. So we are sitting on the Earth, and now you are seeing how STEREO A and STEREO B is moving and moving and moving, and giving you more view. Somewhere it will cross this L4 point and L3 point as well, and again it will go all the way back here as well and take the image of the Sun from the back side. So which has never been earlier taken, because you understand Sun is also rotating. So you continuously can't track one feature, because that will, after 28 days, it will go backwards. So if you want to take the dynamics of some feature continuously and you want to track, so for that tracking, you need to observation from the backside also. So STEREO A and STEREO B, when it was in that phase, and you can see the timing in 2012, sometime it was here, these two were in this position, and they can help you, be it 3D reconstruction or be it tracking of the some object from the here up to its whole rotation of the one rotation of the 27 days. Again, after the whole rotation, it will again come back if it is survived that much, because the sunspot or filament structure, sometime it is this filament, let's say 2-3 days, it can erupt and make any coronal mass ejection, and sometimes some filament can also stay there for a long time, but it changes its morphology, so it's not in the same shape. So unless you have a observation from backside and other side, you are not sure that it is the same filament or it is also faded away and new filament came up. Now I'll maybe little bit try to increase my speed more. So just to say, this is solar panel of this SDO, just to show what are the component of a satellite. So the solar panel will be there always, not for SDO satellite, any satellite, just to give the energy. Sun is there, but only it is not a problem of energy. But for this new satellite like the Solar Orbiter or Parker Solar Probe, which is going really close to the Sun, it is not a problem of getting energy. But it is problem of getting rid of energy, you have to shield your satellite from this high intense radiation. But anyway, some not only battery will not be sufficient to give you energy for a long time, so solar panel helps you to get the energy from sun itself. And then you will have this AIRs talking about, so you may have, depending on your science goal, some imager which will take continuously images of the sun, or you also can have some spectroscopy instrument which will take a spectra of the sun, right? And also you could have this HMI, which is from the this Zeeman splitting principle and polarization, that will take the measurement of magnetic field of the photosphere. And there has to be a one antenna, also high gain antenna, to transmit the data towards you and to receive the signal if you want to send some signal to the satellite. And also there could be in principle some in situ instrument which will be there very much for the solar orbiter and also Parker Solar Probe to measure the magnetic beat, magnetic field or particle density or whatever in that point itself. And because all these were remote sensing instrument almost for this case of SDO, all these be it HMI or AIA. Now coming to this is a massive filament which got erupted, and this you can understand this how much big CME and how much hazardous could happen due to this kind of big filament eruption. So that is the movie of that same filament eruption, which shows how it got erupted and what is the consequences of it and what it can be, how much devastating it can be. So again, I'll just fast forward that movie. Yeah, so this was a close-up view. So now this is a little bit zoom out view. And now you see the same filament eruption you see after closing the disk of the sun. And from this SOHO 1 instrument, it has LASCO, and it has a different field of view, C2, C3, so to call. And it sees in that region, and also is this interplanetary medium in this is higher field of view, which is using another imager. So that is all about this. And now it's continuously, if you compose, take a overplot all this SDO image and also this SOHO image, so you can get this continuous evolution of this event. Okay, now maybe coming to that next slide. Yeah, so this is a beautiful coronal rain event. So sometimes this corona from Mars get also cooled down. Not only it get hot due to reconnection, sometimes also it gets cooled down. Very interestingly, and then when it becomes cool, so that due to this buoyancy effect, it's become heavy, and like the rain, it's fall down against its surface. So you can see it's beautifully named as coronal rain. And from SDO simple imaging, you can see how this looks like. But to make a really good thing, you have to make also spectroscopy observation, but that comes from the other instrument, not the SDO, because all looking at the sun simultaneously. So if you can do that, you can do a good science out of it, or even better science out of it. And not only we do this thing, but from this satellite you can see nice interesting event like this Mercury transit. So it's a composite image. You can see how this Mercury was transiting from the, and that you can see from the SDO itself. So again, if you play that movie, so you can able to see this May 19, 2016 Mercury transit. So you see from the SDO how nicely you can observe that, and this is also helpful for popularizing science. And also you can study the atmosphere of Mercury, like this solar orbiter mission. When it was passing through this Venus atmosphere, it can even directly do the in situ measurement of the Venus atmosphere, right? So but not in this case, it is only imaging, but even from the imaging you can do something. So yeah, now in the multi wavelength, you see the background is AIA 193 image, and it is overplotted with AIA 304, and background lot of activity, coronal activity you can see. So again, I'll not play the full movie, only fast forward it, and then maybe I'll go to next slide. So now, as I was telling that sometime not only planets, but it also blocked by the Earth itself, because it is a tilted polar orbit, and it was a time when it was got blocked by the Earth, and then it got blocked by the Moon again. So a double eclipse observed by the SDO that you can see. And also during that time, if you can study something on this Earth and Moon, so that also can be done in principle. So now coming to next, so first impression will be that will be some artistic image, some kind of Van Gogh kind of artist has done that, but no, sorry to say, this is a real image of this temperature. If you different image of wavelength correspond to different temperature, and for is this loop, coronal kind of loop, and with different activity, if you just tag them and do it, represent with different color, so you really produce this kind of nice image. So you this coronal kind of hot loops in the different temperature, right? Now from this different temperature, you take a box, a place, and then you plot the intensity variation. So, but that is for one temperature, one variation. Then you take subsequent pixel, and that also you do a composite image, and then you get this kind of nice picture, which is also like from artistic point of view very interesting, but also from scientific point of view to study the temperature variation of the sun, and is very interesting. Now maybe I'll come to some intensity variation of the sun, and again from multi-instrument. So this is base image is this SDO, and then you can measure the Gauss X-ray flux during this flare. So whenever you will see there is a flare here in this active region, so it is basically integrating all the intensity in this area and plotting here. And in the Gauss, this is the lower curve, and the upper curve in the Gauss flux, the red curve, it is Gauss actually takes sun as a star, total flux out of the sun it is calculating. So you will see 1-to-1 correlation. When there will be flare, there will be one peak in the Gauss X-ray measurement, total intensity of the total sun. So like that, multi-instrument stuff gives us unique opportunity to study the flare, and also the coronal other activity associated with the flare, like there are flare CME relation, and there are a lot understood, but yet lot of things yet to be understood, which can be very much done with this help of this multi-instrument kind of thing. So now maybe I'll just show one image and one movie, which you will see this activity is very less if you just look at the surface. So if I play the movie, this activity, this is by the way moving, so this is the next and next subsequent images is coming, but you see very less activity. All these sunspot are there, but very less activity. I'll focus on this particular sunspot only and try to see how in the other wavelength the activity varies. So let's do that, and let's go into the next movie maybe. Yeah. So now you see close-up view of that sunspot. Okay. So if you now do that, you see in this close view also you see some of the more activity, but still not that much of activity. But what happened if you go to now this extreme ultraviolet and all other wavelength? Now I'm a little bit fast forwarding the movie due to the time constant. So I little bit show the what is the activities there, what are the loops over the active region, and then I'll go in the next slide. So here at the same region you will see active region are there. Now I'll go to next slide. And now in the same region I'll show what are the coronal activity. So now I'll zoom in and go into that particular active region in this region, and now you will see what are the activity it's happening in the, otherwise it was showing almost still. So there are a lot of hot loops, and there are a lot of this kind of hot loops also getting cooled and coming down flow is you can observe. And there will be small, so there will be small reconnection, small kind of this flare, which is also popularly now known as campfire after the solar orbiter observed that, but that also can be interpreted as a small kind of this kind of nano flare, an even smaller thing, because the solar orbiter resolution is even resolved, even which is not even 1 pixel here. Okay, so now that is about this activity of this. Now maybe I'll go to again next slide. I guess I'm in the same slide still. So yeah, I hope now it is next slide. And now I'll show with the multiple wavelength of the same, with which I represent with the different color. So here I not only will use the SDO different external wavelength, but also DC X-ray flux. That also.
We can't hear you.
Hello. Yeah. Maybe there was some issue with the internet or microphone. Now, is it okay?
It's okay. Okay.
Fine. So now I was telling about this evolution of this and in different wavelength, and not only I use SDO wavelength, but from this RACI you can see the foot point of this loops in the X-ray. So you can see also the X-ray foot point. Now the same event I'll even show with, yeah, that I guess I already shown. So I'll show same event with some spectroscopic measurement. So you plan your observation in the same place where you see some sunspot is there in the extreme ultraviolet from SDO taking the images each and every 12 seconds. You see some activities happening. So quickly from the other observatory, which is named as IRIS, which just looked mainly in the transition region, and that is campaign based. So you plan your observation in that portion because it does not capture the full sun. It is take only a simple portion. So you have to choose and be very clever enough to which portion to choose. Now we'll choose this portion, and it is a slit jaw image. So it is not only taking spectroscopy, but in IRIS also there will be a slit passing through this center of the image. That's why you see a black color in the center of image. And now you see it is scanning through that, coming to and forth. And from this you will get very valuable spectroscopic data of that this active region, and you will be able to know more about this activity, whatever you are seeing in all this wavelength. So this is the beauty of the new satellites and multiple coordinated observation with each other. So that is RACI foot point, X-ray foot point of this loop. So now this was like all like very IRIS also now you can safely call it little old satellite due to this new kind of thing which came this solar orbiter, and then this Parker Solar Probe, and maybe now then I'll go to that. So this is nicely seen this magnetic switchback from this Parker Solar Probe, and you can see all this switchback which was earlier not known. And even when Parker Solar Probe was reach even further closer to sun, because each orbit it is going closer and closer to sun. So then it is speculated by the scientists that this kind of event of the switchback will be more intense and more frequent. So then it is more probabilistic to capture more kind of this event, and hopefully scientists will come into some conclusion whether this is from the turbulence or reconnection. And now let's come some animation of this Parker Solar Probe and try to understand how this Parker Solar Probe will go to the closer to the sun. So it does not only help with your fuel of your rocket or something. So it also uses the gravity help of the Venus, and when it's come closer to Venus, and when it goes closer to sun, obviously it will sun gravity also will affect it, and also it when it crosses the earth, the gravity of earth also. So that it's not only get help of the gravity to gain some velocity, but also to reduces some velocity component which is perpendicular to this orbital. Because why, you try to understand, if you launch something, so you're from earth, so from earth is also having an orbital velocity, so that you already added when your spacecraft is you are launching it. So that's why launching in Mars is more easier to launching towards the sun, right? So somehow you have to cancel those components. So that's you do with this multiple orbit and with this help of Venus gravity and all. So that is through the Parker Solar Probe, which will go really close to the sun, somewhere like even nearer to this Mercury orbit, which is some 6 million kilometers close to sun, and which is to its nearest approach, still yet to be do that. And but it will remain in the ecliptic plane. So what is the ecliptic plane? So all this planet, including our Earth and sun, has in a plane, right? So that is ecliptic plane. But to see your this pole of the your sun, which is very crucial to understand this magnetic field, how this north-south flips happens, because on all you have to see the pole and take the image and spectral whatever thing of the pole. So another thing is solar orbital, which will go closer to sun also, but not as close as this Parker Solar Probe. But main point will be the viewing the sun with a tilt angle and viewing the pole of the sun. So now I'll show that the solar orbiter, it will also take the help of the Venus gravity. And now you see it is slowly, it is also, I'm quoting the timeline 2021, 22, and you see how this solar orbiter, 1 minute, it's maybe went to next slide. Yeah, now it is. So now you see how with this timeline it is going more and more tilted. But having said that, it will not be like tilted like there was a very nice satellite sent by this, again, this like the solar orbiter mission NASA is a collaboration, which is known as Ulysses. That even went like 80 degree. It will be not that, it will be close to 30 degree or like that. But the beauty of it, in the Ulysses, there are only this in situ instrument, no like, because if you open your camera towards sun for that time technology, it will like get destroyed. But with now the newer technology, you can survive there also. And it was not even went the close to the sun, very far, even from outer orbit, it has taken pole images. Now solar orbiter will take the images in situ instrument, all the going very close to the sun and also near to the pole, not at 80 degree, but 35 degree like that. So now to understand whatever I already told in a animation, like how this kind of mission, like this solar, let's say this be it solar Parker. So I'll try to explain this with this animation, this solar Parker mainly. So you see here is your Earth. So you launch your rocket, but your rocket will get some this velocity in this component, velocity component in this direction, right? Now you have to cancel that direction, right? So to cancel that component, you have to do this multiple orbit rotation, and by one and one rotation you either accelerate or deaccelerate in one of your component, and this is the two component I am showing, and like that you slowly with the multiple orbit with the Parker Solar Probe, you slowly go closer and closer to the sun. So that's the principle when you go with the multiple orbit and you go and use the Venus gravity, and your other component of this, like which is towards this your orbit of orbital direction of the your Earth, that you reduces. So yeah, your launch speed, and you can see calculate from that how much rotation, how much orbital period you need to achieve those kind of thing using this Venus gravity. From the simple calculation you can do that. So here is this picture of this multiple orbital. So you see slowly you cancelling up your other component, and then your eclipse you are getting through this more and more closer to the sun. So that is done for both the cases, be it solar orbiter, be it the Parker Solar Probe. The Parker Solar Probe will be in the ecliptic plane, but solar orbiter, but it will go, Parker Solar Probe will go much closer to the sun, but solar orbiter will go closer, but not that much, because its main focus was to observe the pole, to study the pole. So with this, now I want to thank you, and I'll be happy to like answer any question you have, and there is no such thing as a stupid question, mainly to encourage the student to ask the question.
Thank you, Rakesh.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, just want to know how to determine the north, south, east, west of the sun. This is the first question. And my second question is, what are the parameters? As we know, the sun is a main sequence star. So hydrogen burning process is going on inside the sun. So what is the core temperature of the sun when the hydrogen burning process actually starts? And what are the other parameters for hydrogen burning is needed? And is this the core temperature is more or less same for all the stars, or is it only for the sun?
Okay, so one by one. So your first question, what was it? Can you again tell your first question?
Yeah, what is the, how do we determine the north, south, east, west?
Right. So north, south. So there are, there are tilt angles. So you exactly don't see if you say the pole. So it is not exactly the magnetic pole what you see from. So your assumption is you are in ecliptic. So even it is sun is tilted like that, you are from Earth, you are seeing. So from your observation point, it will be a projection in 2D. So whatever you will see in the top, that will call as a north, and the whatever you see in down, you will call it south. But your magnetic north and magnetic south, which will be different from this, and for this also, and this I call as a B0 angle correction. Also, you have to make that depending. This angle also varies when you are different position in Earth orbit. So that all has been is the part of the calibration when you do, like you give in your header of your FITS file or whatever the file you save as a data file of these images. So you give all the information like your location of your observation, your time of your observation. From that you can calculate in which position your Earth was and which angle it was viewing, and now you are correct for that. And but basic assumption is north is upwards, south is downwards, like that. But having said that, there will be like magnetic north and south will not be that. So magnetic north and south will be what this magnetic field all will be originating, and south will be all the where all this field will be converging. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay. And
second question. Coming to your second question, so your model of this stellar model. So for there are various parameters for any stellar model, be it sun or be it other parameters. So one is obviously this metallicity. So which is like the what is your ratio abundance, also call it abundance. So what is like different your whatever your material is there, be it hydrogen, be it iron. So we take with respect to hydrogen how much is the abundance, that is called metallicity. So how much fraction is iron is presence in if you take ratio with the hydrogen. Now going to helium, what is the ratio of that with the hydrogen? So that fraction we call it metallicity. So that is one of the parameter only, but you then you have other density and all other mass, total mass, luminosity. So all this parameter goes in. Now coming to,
is there any particular core temperature, sir?
Particular core temperature. Well, so there is two things. One is this, you can estimate that from model. So you feed it all this parameter to model and you estimate the temperature from the model. And another technique is you measure. So you can't go inside the core. So one is like the model and another is like the heliosismology. For the sun, it's called heliosismology, the seismology technique. So sun, you can say it's also inside lot of this kind of wave is traveling. Okay, so this kind of wave, something you can also see beneath the photosphere. So till photosphere and also in some subsurface measurement. So basically in the, I talked about this GONG measurement, GONG NSO. They take some H alpha data and also take some Doppler magnetogram, Dopplerogram. So all this Doppler measurement, you see all this intensity oscillation in the sun from this Doppler measurement, and from that oscillation you try to infer the different parameter inside the sun. So from that also you can go little deeper, and that also gives some input to your model again, or like that. But you can't directly estimate the temperature. Other than the best you can do is assume some model, and with that you just try to infer it. But that will be very different from be it like the sun, be it other other star. For different stellar model, it will be like plane parallel thing you can assumption or something else. So it will be different kind of assumption will go in, and different thing. But having said that, like more and more, if you have observation, be it from seismology and other thing, more and more observational constant you have, more and more you have binding on the model. So to say, sun is a like the place where you can resolve the star very good in both in the spatial and temporal cadence. So spatial means you can you can resolve it in the you can see any structure, and when I talk about the cadence, so you can take frequent image to see any dynamics. So by that you can see with enormous and unprecedented precision this kind of parameters. And for this reason, sun's temperature is always very core temperature, very much within very less error bar. But for the other star and all, it will be depending on the stellar model and how much observation parameter constant you have. Yes.
Dr. Rakesh.
Yes.
Yeah, your presentation is very good, but I have one doubt.
Yeah,
I'm not working in the area of astrophysics.
Okay.
But, you have mentioned in your one slide,
Right.
the chromospheric temperature is from 4,000 to 8,000 Kelvin. But I have read somewhere
No, sir.
10,000 to 50,000 Kelvin.
No, sir. Maybe I have not mentioned that, or maybe
No. In your slide, it shows 4,000 to 8,000 Kelvin, whereas photospheric temperature is from 4,000 to 6,500 Kelvin.
No, what happens, sir? Basically, this 4,700 Kelvin is the temperature of the roughly temperature of the photosphere. Okay. So then what happens? So then after photosphere, then the immediate next layer is chromosphere. So then what happens? The temperature initially decreases. So initially it reaches decreasing and reaches whatever you are saying 4,400 or something. That minimum temperature is reaches. Then it's start increasing
to higher value. Okay.
It is like 38,000. It will be 38,000 Kelvin chromospheric.
Yeah, that's what.
Temperature.
And one more thing regarding the Fraunhofer-line explanation.
Right.
In older textbooks, you must have seen that photospheric temperature is very high, chromosphere is at a lower temperature. Therefore, the elements present in the chromosphere absorb their characteristic lines. But I have a different explanation in some other book like Harold Zareen, Astrophysics of the Sun.
Right.
There he mentioned about the lower excitation energy. Could you highlight about those things if you have worked on that?
Yeah, not much, but like I want to shed one particular and draw your attention to one thing, that whatever temperature we are talking about, it is not also like this. It's constant throughout all the surface, be it photosphere, be it chromosphere. So it is like all the at average temperature. So if there is some reconnection even in the chromosphere, certain temperature increase will be there. And in some point also similarly there could be cooling effect also there. So like this chromospheric condensation, we know chromospheric condensation. So sometimes this chromospheric material get very low temperature and it falls down. So that is one of the thing I would like to draw your attention. But having said that, again, I have to read more, and what are the reference you have given, I'll again go more through it, and then I guess I'll be in a position to able answer your question in a better way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rakesh.
Yes, sir.
Rakesh, can you exit from the presentation so that we can see all the people?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, now, all of you please ask questions. This is the one of the right part of this program. So you can ask in English, you can ask in Hindi, Bangla, or Malayalam, and there we will translate for him if he is not understanding.
Yeah.
So this should be a very interactive.
I'm sorry if I've taken a little more time in my talk itself. And cut it short your time for question, but I'll be here for any of your question and doubt. So don't worry about that. So you can ask any question, and as I told for the students, it is no question is a stupid question, so you can ask any question.
Okay, somebody please ask. So if there is no one, I will request Sunil to deliver the vote of thanks before we conclude the program. So I thank Dr. Rakesh to have presented a very good presentation, and we all enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and but the Adda was, I think, not so. We want more interaction.
Yeah, definitely, sir.
It should become an Adda. I think people should join us again next month when they speak like an Adda. It is not. It's a very informal session. You can ask anything. You can ask in Bangla, Hindi, Malayalam, or whichever language you want, and people will be there to translate it. So, Sunil, are you there? Sunil?
Yes.
Yeah, can you just please deliver the vote of thanks?
Okay, on behalf of Regional Science and Planetarium and Public Outreach and Education Committee of Astronomical Society of India, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Rakesh Majumdar from ARIES, because he has given a nice explanation and detail about the various properties of sun and various solar explorations. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So we will sign off for today.